This is NDTV, and you're watching NDTV Profit.
The CBI raids Vodafone and Airtel offices in Delhi, Mumbai and Gurgaon for alleged wrongdoing in spectrum allocation during Pramod Mahajan's tenure as Telecom Minister. Its FIR names the Telecom Secretary and the Deputy Director General at that time. The BJP reacts sharply to the CBI raids on Vodafone and Airtel offices, saying that this is an attempt to malign the NDA government and divert attention from the ongoing probe into the 2G scam. The BJP says the government and the CBI are only trying to protect the Home Minister. Global equities close a week of heavy selling. It's the worst weekly performance for US indices in 2 months. European shares also end at a 6-week closing low on Friday. Good evening. Thanks for tuning in to NDTV Profit. I'm Bianca. A Saturday packed with news developments. We'll highlight the day's top stories for you. Here's the top big story related to 2G scam. Just days before the winter session of the Parliament, the CBI has dropped a new bombshell in the 2G scam. The CBI today has carried out raids across the offices of telecom majors Bharti Airtel and Vodafone in New Delhi, in Mumbai and in Lucknow. The raids pertain to alleged irregularities in allocation of additional spectrum during late Pramod Mahajan's tenure as Telecom Minister. Pramod Mahajan was in charge of telecommunications between 2001 and 2003 in the NDA regime. The investigating agency also carried out searches at residences of former Telecom Secretary Ghose and some other telecom officials, including the ex-BSNL director, and the FIR lodged by the CBI also names Ghose. Now, he has been charged with conspiracy, criminal misconduct and abusing official position. But of course, reacting to the CBI raids, Airtel and Vodafone both of them have issued statements clarifying that the spectrum was allocated to them as per government rules and regulations and that their spectrum allocation was above board. All documents are in place. Both companies said that they are in compliance with existing rules and that they are cooperating fully with the CBI. Arijit Banerjee joins in right now with the latest on that development. Good evening, Arijit. Are the raids still on? What time did they begin? And any latest leads on what paperwork regarding spectrum allocation the CBI found?
The raids, of course, Bianca, began very early in the morning and they went on till late in the evening. The raids, we know for sure, are now over, at least in Bharti's office. And what we learned from our sources is that the officials raiding the offices were basically looking at documents pertaining to spectrum allocation during Pramod Mahajan's time. Just to give you a bit of background, what had happened at that time was most of the operators who had got licenses till then were actually having 4.4 megahertz spectrum with them per circle. During Pramod Mahajan's time, it was decided to increase it by 1.8 megahertz to 6.2 megahertz. And today, of course, that has become something which we know as contracted spectrum, which is available with the telecom license. So there was, during Justice Patil's study of the allocation of license and spectrum, which was ordered by the present telecom minister, Kapil Sibal, Justice Patil's report had commented on the fact that this additional allocation actually opened the floodgates and could have led to loss of revenue for the government, because the government was only supposed to give 4.4 and this 1.8 megahertz would have also have given them a certain amount of money. And that's why the CBI was looking at those documents. We know for a fact that they have photocopied certain documents or originals retaining to this, and they have taken those documents with them. At the moment, they were looking more at the documentation part rather than questioning individuals. But we learned from our sources that now in the next few days, there would be officials who were at that time in those two companies who were concerned with the issue of spectrum allocation may also be questioned on certain issues. And Bianca, just to give you a viewpoint of the operators have said very clearly that what they have done was according to the government policy at that time. They did not violate the policy, and therefore they are not in the wrong. They got spectrum according to the present policy. In fact, the operators say that the government has on and on continuously, that is the present government has also defended this allocation of 6.2 megahertz. So they are a little surprised by this whole move by the Central Bureau of Investigation. Back to you.
Arijit, these raids come in the backdrop of the Supreme Court's direction to the CBI to investigate the allocation of 2G spectrum before the tenure of former Telecom Minister A. Raja, who is the alleged mastermind for the scam. Give us a quick overview of what these raids mean overall in the 2G scam investigations from that point and also for the companies.
Very true, Bianca. If you look at it, what this means is that now CBI is now looking at the period which was basically the NDA regime when two critical things happened. One, of course, this extra spectrum was given to the operators, and the other was, of course, also during Arun Shoury's regime when companies which had entered in the WLL space were allowed to actually become fully mobile, which was Reliance Industries at that time, which owned Reliance Infocom and Tata Teleservices, and also the operators, the GSM players, were also allowed to go beyond 6.2 as well, up to 8 to 10 megahertz. So it will be crucial to see whether the CBI puts a value to the loss which was given to these existing operators. But it also means that now all telecom companies in the country are under the CBI scanner. Now it's not just companies which got licenses in 2008, but now all companies right from the beginning who have licenses with them and who have got spectrum and who provide mobile services are now under CBI scanner. What that will have as an impact on the mobile sector and the mobile industry in the country is also a big question which has now arisen. Back to you.
Arijit, thanks very much for the clarity and the perspective on this developing story. Now, the BJP has reacted sharply to the CBI raids on Vodafone and Bharti Airtel offices, saying that this is an attempt to malign the NDA government and to divert attention from the ongoing probe into the 2G scam. The BJP says that the government and the CBI, they're only trying to protect the Home Minister, but the Congress says that it has nothing to do with the CBI's investigation.
This is a case of complicity, and this is equal responsibility of Chidambaram along with Raja in 2G spectrum scam. But to save him, now CBI is diverting the attention, and that is why it has raked up a policy matter. This is the worst political abuse by the Congress of CBI.
And while on the subject of telecom, the telecom industry is staring at an over 1,200 crore rupee penalty after a special audit of its accounts. But there may be some relief. Telecom Minister Kapil Sibal has written to the Department of Telecom on the penalty and said that he wants his ministry to give one last chance to telecom companies to explain their stand before the demand notices are issued. Kapil Sibal has asked his ministry to allow operators to present their side of the case. Now, this special audit of telecom companies' revenues, it pertains to the audit which was done for the years 2006-2007 and 2007-2008, and the auditors had found that most telecom companies had underreported their revenues, and companies like Arcom, Bharti, Idea, Vodafone and Tata Teleservices, they now face demand notice from the Department of Telecom. We'll keep you posted on developments on that side. The Government of India has approved projects worth 25,000 crore rupees on Friday. It has decided to fast-track project clearance by dividing the process into two categories. Projects worth between 1,500 and 5,000 crore rupees, they come under the first category, and the second category is for projects which are worth above 5,000 crore rupees. Sapna Das joins in right now with the exact details of these project clearances and the method that has now been adopted by the government.
Well, it's a simple indication by the government here that most of the projects which are stuck as of now, they're trying to put it on the fast track. All the three projects put together are worth around 25,000 crores. The biggest of them is the L&T Metro project worth 16,000 crores.
The first meeting on project clearance was held by the Finance Minister with India Inc. on the 18th of October, when 12 projects worth 17,000 crore rupees were cleared, and this next meeting on the same issue will be held on December 18th. Here at now, a quick comment from D.K. Mittal. He's the Finance Secretary on the same issue.
3 projects have been cleared of 25,000 crores, where the clearances have been given and the projects are under implementation. It is expected that rest of the projects, the clearances would be available before the next meeting. That is what the Honourable Ministers have committed before the Finance Minister.
In a bid to widen the existing service tax net, the government has released a revised list of those services which it plans to exempt from service tax via the creation of a negative list of services. The government plans to tax all other services which are not under this particular negatives list. Now, the government expects a 20% hike in its revenues because of this new services list once it becomes effective. The list, though, is open for public debate till the 15th of December. Sapna Das caught up with the CBEC chairman, Mr. S.K. Goel, on this issue.
Revenue angle will depend on what is the final shape of the negative list. So as per this negative list, what will come is too early to say. Too early.
The last week saw sharp cuts in equities, with the BSE Sensex shedding 4.78%, that's 820 points. The market also was basically mainly impacted because of the Eurozone debt crisis and sharper depreciation of the rupee against the US dollar. Now, there was a sharp outflow of almost 1,050 crore rupees during the week. The BSE mid-cap and small-cap indices, they were down 7% and 8% respectively. Ashu Sharma right now joins in and compiles for us a comprehensive market check for the week that just went by.
First, let's look at the broader markets. Nifty sold off 5%, Sensex was down 4%. Sensex Nifty officially were the worst performing indices as far as the rest of the Asian markets are concerned. Mid caps, small caps, beyond the large caps, it is this segment of the market which has generated tremendous amount of fear among the minds of traders. What's actually gone wrong? The intensity of sell-offs in some of those stocks was as high as 50%. And in very quick succession, in just a matter of 4-5 days, the tide has turned completely. Stocks like Quality Dairy, Pipavav Defence, Sri Renuka, Suzlon, PTC India lost anywhere between 30 to 50% among themselves. And the issue of pledged shares, issue of companies having extraordinary amount of debt, and also the fact that FCCB is coming up for redemption are the three key factors which some or the other way were the joining links as far as all these stocks are concerned.
With the rupee depreciating to a near 32-month low against the US dollar, Finance Minister Pranab Mukherjee today said that the Reserve Bank is keeping a close eye on the situation. His comments came a day after the Indian rupee plunged to a 32-month low, below the 51 to the dollar mark, on persistent demand for the US currency from banks and importers. The Indian rupee is the fourth most depreciated currency in the world now. Ira Dugal compiles for us a report on the rupee weakness, the reasons and the direction in the coming week for the Indian currency.
It's been a rough week for the rupee, particularly the Friday trading session. The rupee opening below 51 to the dollar, now very, very close to its all-time lows of 52.18. The factors remain the same. The dollar is relatively strong. The inflow of dollars into the economy is very, very low. But what's been characteristic of this bout of weakness is the complete lack of intervention from the RBI. In fact, the RBI even suggesting they don't have the capacity to intervene. That sparked off a debate. There are people who are for intervention, who are saying that we have reasonable forex reserves and all other Asian central banks have intervened, so we should as well. Those against it say that our forex reserves are adequate but not surplus, so we need to be careful with them, and also that once you start intervening, it's a slippery slope. On the economic side of things, there are two arguments again. Those who say that this is increasing your import cost and your imported inflation, and those who say that this will actually in the longer term be beneficial from the trade deficit perspective, and imported inflation is not a concern. Here are both sides of the story.
The worst week for US stocks in 2 months ended with traders mostly sitting out on Friday as they waited for politicians in Europe and the United States to tackle festering debt problems. Friday's directionless market on Wall Street showed more exhaustion than relief as Europe remained investors' primary worry. For the week, the Dow Jones has fallen almost 3%, the S&P 500 index dropping 3.8%, and the Nasdaq has lost 4%. While investors are trying to come to grips with how much of an impact the European debt crisis is going to have on the US economy, data on from the United States showed that a continued improvement, at least on the economic side. A gauge of future US economic activity rose more than expected in the month of October. Over then to Europe and a quick check of equity markets there. European shares ended at a 6-week closing low on Friday after comments from German Chancellor Angela Merkel cooled the market and its hopes that Europe's largest economy will somehow back monetary measures to tackle the Eurozone debt crisis. The FTSE Eurofirst index of top European shares, it closed down almost 1% and saw a weekly fall of 3.5%. Now, the ECB on Friday intervened in the secondary bond market to relieve the relieve the pressure on Italian bonds, and stocks found some support after Italian and Spanish bond yields, they fell thanks to that buying by the European Central Bank. That's what happened across global equities. A short break here. Coming up on the other side, a special report on the FMCG wars. It's all set to intensify because joining into the fray are retailers with their private labels and in-house brands who are now selling their private labels to mom-and-pop stores. Stay with us, short break. on here on NDTV Profit. A recap of all the top national news stories of the day. Former Telecom Minister Sukharam, he's convicted of taking rupees 3 lakh as bribe to give a lucrative contract to a private firm way back in 1996. He was on Saturday today sentenced to 5 years in jail by a Delhi court. He pleaded for leniency in court on grounds of his old age, while the CBI called him a habitual offender and maximum punishment for him. The 86-year-old former minister was held guilty for misusing his official position during his tenure as telecom minister in PV Narasimha Rao's cabinet in giving a contract worth 30 crore rupees to a private company, Haryana Telecom Limited. Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Omar Abdullah has said that his government will address some of the concerns raised by the army on the issue of the proposed withdrawal of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act from some areas of the valley. But Omar Abdullah added that the government still plans to go ahead with the decision of lifting the controversial act from certain areas of the state.
I believe that there is ample scope for us to go ahead with what we have decided to do, while at the same time addressing some of the concerns that the army has brought forward. Beyond that, I'm not going to say anything.
Sports Minister Rajay Maken has reacted strongly to former cricketer Vinod Kambli's claims that the 1996 World Cup semi-final, where India lost to Sri Lanka, it was fixed. He said that the cricket board should probe into the allegations that are made by Vinod Kambli, and also the allegations against Azharuddin should be probed. But BCCI member and Union Minister Rajiv Shukla says that he does not want to give any importance to Kambli's allegations. The FMCG wars, they're all set to intensify, because joining into the fray now are retailers with their private labels and in-house brands. Shivani Desai finds out how retailers are now selling their private labels to mom-and-pop stores.
These so-called private labels found exclusively on the shelf of retailers will now go public. As a part of its expansion strategy, Future Group has started retailing its own private food labels to local mom-and-pop stores as a pilot project. Private labels currently contribute 20% to Future Group's revenues, but the group hopes to eventually increase the contribution from private labels to 33% by pushing the brands through their cash-and-carry network, Aadhaar.
We have built our FMCG private brands as standalone brands through our Aadhaar wholesale markets. We are testing out taking these brands to and servicing the emerging aspirations in the hinterland of the country.
The retail industry's experience with taking private labels public has been mixed. Reliance Retail, which adopted the strategy way back in 2009, was forced to rethink its strategy as it failed to reap dividends, while others like Aditya Birla and Hypercity are reluctant to go down that route due to distribution challenges.
Key challenges that one would see is brand building, investment in brand building, creating a separate organization and a separate channel completely.
While there are many challenges in pushing private labels to the wider market, Biani's team hopes to leverage their existing distribution network and their brand strength in making a success out of this strategy. In Mumbai, Shivani Desai for NDTV Profit.
That's a wrap then on this edition of Breaking News. Thanks very much for watching. Coming up next is The Big Spender.